And now we'll be welcoming the Black Liberation Caucus presentation. Do we have folks ready to take over?
Yes, Darian. It appears we're missing Rosa. So I will play, she's actually in Puerto Rico. So I'll probably play the role of moderator as well as speaker. So if I could just explain to everyone how we've organized this session, intended as a 45-minute session. Each of us, myself, Shante, and George, will speak for 7 minutes. And then we're going to open it up for questions and discussion. So I have my stopwatch, George. And so, George, since you're the queen of timekeeping, maybe you can help with Shante in her 7 minutes. And then, of course, you can time yourself. But George will need to share the screen. So whoever is handling the technical parts of that, George, when it comes to her presentation, will need to share the screen. So the topic is about the Black Liberation Caucus and how it was formed. And in order to talk about how the Black Liberation Caucus was formed, we have to talk about how the 3 branches in the South were formed, led by Black women. So I will begin by saying what the catalyst was for that. In December of 2020, George Friday and I were basically the architects of the AFRICOM webinar. We worked very hard on that to make sure that there were lots of organizations that signed on in support of it, including asking the Black Alliance for Peace and Margaret Kimberly. I found out later that Margaret Kimberly had spoken many times to WILPF gatherings, and no one had ever asked her to join. I asked Margaret to join on a Sunday morning when we were talking about the AFRICOM webinar, and she immediately went to the WILPF website and joined. Well, the actual impetus for building the branches in the South came when Ellen Thomas said that I was the most racist person that she'd ever known. And it was a real example of how there's a cluelessness about racism and white supremacy inside of WILPF, because if you're talking about institutional racism, it doesn't make you a racist. But somehow in the mind of Ellen Thomas, that was how she saw me, because I was talking about institutional racism. It made me a racist. So it was from that moment that I realized that there had to be more Black women engaged in the organization. So I proceeded very quickly to ask the board of the Southern Anti-Racism Network if we as an organization would support the formation of branches in the South led by Black women. When I first encountered WILPF, it was in the late 80s in Cleveland, and Ione Biggs and Kathleen Gethers were the leaders of the Cleveland, what I thought was the Cleveland branch of WILPF. So for many, many years, I thought WILPF was a Black organization. And when I moved to Durham, North Carolina, and went to my first event of the Triangle branch, and I saw all the white members, I was like, oh, I thought WILPF was a Black organization. And the women in the branch were just falling down laughing. I don't know if Lucy Lewis remembers that, but Tema Okun, who is well known for her anti-racism work nationally, but particularly in the Triangle. She was laughing so hard, I thought she couldn't control herself when I said I thought WILPF was a Black organization. Well, I have learned over these many years of being associated with WILPF, it is a far cry from being a Black organization. However, what we're building in the South with the branches, initially I thought naming the branch after Ione Biggs, because she made such an impression on me with all her trips to Cuba. But instead, I decided to name the branch in Columbus, Georgia, the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. The Fannie Lou Hamer branch lifts up the fact that Fannie Lou Hamer was treated differently as a member of WILPF because she was a sharecropper and did not have a college degree. That is spelled out very clearly in the book, No Peace Without Freedom, Race and the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom by Dr. Joyce Blackwell. I have that book and I've referenced it many times over the months as we continue to build the branches. So after we were on our way to building the branches led by Black women in the South, it became clear to me that we needed to draw in other Black members sprinkled around the country. And so we decided to launch the Black Liberation Caucus. That is how the idea came to be. And so the Black Liberation Caucus, as well as the 3 branches in the South, led by Black women, we are supported by the talent and treasure of the Southern Anti-Racism Network. As a matter of fact, the Fannie Lou Hamer branch gifted 8 memberships to women to form the 10-member branch by January or February of this year. I believe we were completely formed by January of this year. After the 8 women were gifted their memberships, I was already a member. Then we asked the wonderful Roy Bourgeois to become an honorary member. So he sent in his $40, Chris Welbeck told me, $40 he sent in, $35 was for his membership, and $5 was for a donation to WILPF, because he and I talked about how important it was that so many WILPF women had come year after year. And I was there at the demonstration at the gates of Fort Benning, where women from WILPF came year after year to protest the School of Americas. And so that's how we got started with building the Black Liberation Caucus in WILPF. Our first meeting was actually on my birthday on June 27th, but we launched the Black Liberation Caucus at the same time we launched the Metro Atlanta branch and the Triad branch. And so next to speak is Shante McLaughlin to say a little bit about how she built, and we worked together actually, but she did much of the bringing people together so that they could go online and join. So there were several persons who were already members, but the ones who went online to join, that meant that we did not give any memberships for the Metro Atlanta branch. Everyone paid on their own, including Shante McLaughlin, who is also co-chair of the Southern Anti-Racism Network. So I'll stop now for Shante to give her a 7-minute talk.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shante McLaughlin, and I am one of the founders of the Metro Atlanta branch of WILPF. And in saying that, the Metro Atlanta branch was formed in May. We currently have 28 members. To form this branch, we had the support of Theresa El-Amin as well as George Friday. And we did have the option to have the backing of SARN, the Southern Anti-Racism Network. However, our members were able to pay their dues, as Theresa El-Amin said and stated. And I believe that inside of the conversation of race and race relations, cross-cultural dialogue is necessary. It's a necessity. It's essential. And without having cross-cultural dialogue,
Mom, I wanna
hold on. You guys, I apologize. It's a Saturday. I'm also a candidate for city council, and my 4-year-old likes to get on camera, which isn't going to happen. So I'm about to come off camera and still have this conversation with you. So in saying that, cross-cultural dialogue is a necessity. Cross-cultural dialogue is something that we should be able to have the freedom to have as human beings. WILPF is to be held to account for impacting and being a model of diversity. So here in Atlanta, there was no Metro Atlanta branch. There were several members who hadn't been active in years. However, Atlanta is 51.5% women, and we're the 9th largest in the nation as of 2019. We have, and these numbers come from the census and the Chamber of Commerce. We have 6 million people in Atlanta. Of the Black and African American ethnicity, there's 48.5%. So in saying that, it is a level, in saying that, I believe that by impacting public policy within organizations and government is the only way for marginalized communities to have a voice. So inside of WILPF, we launched the Black Liberation Caucus to make certain that Brown and Black individuals have the ability to engage in global conversations that impact all people. It is very difficult for us to have representation when there is no representation of Brown and Black people. Because to deny a city like Metro Atlanta a branch is to say that we don't need a voice. So in saying that, that is where the Atlanta, I apologize, guys, but that is where it was the necessity for us to have our voices heard and to be able to be boots on the street with organizing. As of today, as stated, there's currently 28 members. All of the members, there were actually 34 members given to us, 3 of which are not in the Atlanta metro area. So we've sent in those names to be excluded from the list. We've also had a couple of doubles or duplicates on the list. So our total is 28. The necessity of us having a voice as women, it's one thing to be oppressed by patriarchs or live in a patriarchal society of male domination, but it's another thing to be oppressed by women. And so with WILPF, if Brown and Black women are not seen, heard, and spoken to, then that's like, what's next? Allowing males to dominate us? So inside of WILPF, it was just necessary. It's a necessity to be held to account for not having 2 to 3 was one of the reasons why I joined WILPF, and I'm grateful. So thank you. And thank you for being patient with me while having my 4-year-old running around in the background. Thank you.
And thank you, Shantae. And give my love to Gregory. I know he likes to be the star of the show. Well, next we have George Friday. And George Friday is kind of our tech expert. So hopefully George can see that she's been made a co-host so that she can do her presentation and also show our basis of political agreement that the Black Liberation Caucus continues to kind of develop. But this is our latest basis of political agreement established from the July meeting. Last Sunday of each month is when we've agreed to meet. So George, you have your 7 minutes. Thank you, sister.
Thank you. And Shante created the perfect segue for me here by talking about building the membership of Black women and creating a setting where our participation and leadership is supported and welcome. That statement underscores the need for the Black Liberation Caucus. In the Carolinas, in North Carolina, we built the Triad branch, and the Triad branch is majority Black women. I'll show you a photo in a bit about a meeting that we had just this week, Monday, in my hometown, of members, not all, but most of the members of the Triad branch. Not just yet, though. I want to mention that what we see as the value of having the Black Liberation Caucus is creating a space that supports the participation and leadership of Black people and other oppressed peoples. We all acknowledge, I say we all, I'm thinking of myself and the folks in the Black Liberation Caucus, although it was really wonderful last night to participate, or yesterday afternoon for some of y'all, last night for me, in the sessions around ending white supremacy and challenging racism. Very, very encouraging. However, we know that given how long WILPF US has been around, its history of being predominantly white-led, its history of not treating women of color well, as Theresa mentioned in her presentation, we, though Shante, Theresa, and I, as organizers of branches, would not be accountable to the women we work with if we did not create a way for them and their leadership and their participation to be supported and encouraged. And the Black Liberation Caucus does that. But not only that, I'm going to share the screen and share with you our basis of political agreement. I want to point out here, I'm going to make it large if I can. Apparently I can't. Oh, there we go. This is our logo that Shante McLaughlin, beautiful and brilliant Shante McLaughlin, created. And hopefully you can see this. That includes the WILPF logo and the Black Liberation Caucus logo, peace sign, the heart, gorgeous. And that is the Black Liberation Caucus logo, which in it you get the message of why we exist, but we have our basis of political agreement that shapes how we're making decisions. You can see and read that. How we create our leadership body, the steering committee, 2 representatives of African descent from each branch. And we meet monthly as a steering committee, those of us on the steering committee. Here are our areas of work, and I really want to point these out. We, the Black Liberation Caucus, are taking on these as priority areas of work. They're not necessarily listed in priority. All of them are important to the Black Liberation Caucus members. Reparations, freeing all political prisoners, ending mass incarceration and creating criminal justice reform, ending voter suppression, free Palestine solidarity, the anti-racist transformation of WILPF US, solidarity with other oppressed peoples of color, universal health care for all, Medicare for all, and immigration justice. That is our basis of political agreement. And it is ambitious and comprehensive. It is a living document. So as we move forward and evolve and become a stronger and larger Black Liberation Caucus, we may make changes to those areas of work, but we make decisions by consensus. So there is democracy and democratic process within this. And we're very proud of that. Now, I want to remind all of us as WILPF US members about our shared values with each other. Those being participating fully and embracing and welcoming the participation of everyone who cares about ending wars, having real peace and justice around a range of issues, which I trust you all have. To do that and be effective, you absolutely have to have the participation of women of color and younger women. And you have to be able to sustain and support that membership. You know, if someone comes to a meeting once or twice and then they leave and don't come again, someone didn't do the job of creating a welcoming and supporting space. Through the Black Liberation Caucus, we hope to model how that's done. Now I'm going to share with you this wonderful photo of our meeting that we had Monday. We met at this fantastic hotel restaurant in Gastonia. And here you see George Friday sitting in her beautiful purple dress in the middle here. Theresa El-Amin with her Women's International League for Peace and Freedom sash that you earn when you've brought in a number of new members. Shante McLaughlin, candidate, looking great. And you'll see here, we had 9 Triad members. We had 5 Triad members to participate in the meeting. 3 of those members are women of color. 3 of those members are women of color. 2 of those members are white. Of course, we welcome the participation of white, reliable allies. And those are white women who are doing the work. You know, no one's perfect, but doing the work to be good, solid allies, as we heard last night during some of the participation and the workshops then. We also have over in the corner near Shante McLaughlin, my time is up, but near Shante is someone who wants to build a branch in South Carolina, also a white woman. She has a partner who's helping her build the branch, a woman of color there. So that is what we're trying to model. And now we're in a position to take questions.
Actually, George, I did say that I would handle the moderation in the absence of Rosa. But if you would like to do that, great. I did notice in the chat that Ann Barron was asking for the document of our basis of political agreement. And I would just like to ask the board, and maybe we'll ask at the next board meeting or ask in time enough for the next board meeting to decide if we, as a Black Liberation Caucus, can have a link along with people signing up for branches, that they can also sign up for the Black Liberation Caucus, because there are several members of African descent around the country who have not yet signed up. And I know who some of them are, and I will reach out to them, but we will continue to sign up new members who are Black women to participate in the caucus. The other thing that people should know is that we agreed in support of other oppressed peoples of color that we do allow the inclusion of peoples, of other people of color. For instance, Rosa Saavedra is from Chile, but she's embraced the Black liberation movement all the time that I've known her, and that's many, many years. So she's a part of the Black Liberation Caucus. She's the only person I can think of who does not self-identify as Black. So George, I saw people writing in the chat, so I will try to help you look at the questions in the chat. But if you could see any questions in the chat that people are asking, so that you can repeat them, and Shante and I or you can answer them.
Great, thanks. There's a question asking how WILPF US can practice accountability within their branches. And it might be a good time to mention ACT. You want to take that question, Theresa?
Yes. Within the Southern Anti-Racism Network, we have a principle we call ACT, which basically is 3 principles: accountability, consistency, and transparency. One of the things I've been doing over these months, because I've been a member consistently for more than 3 years, so I'm eligible to run for the national board. Hint, hint. I will be running in the upcoming election for a seat on the national board. But what we've been doing in talking with people in branches, including the Philadelphia branch, I've talked with folks who are members of the Detroit branch, of the, I believe it's Seattle, where Natasha Bay, but I've talked to women around the country, and they are in many cases in all white branches. Looking at the San Diego presentation, it appeared to be all of the women were women of European descent. I don't know for sure what happened with the Philadelphia, because I don't know if Anna Santoyo identifies as European or not, but I do know that most, if not all, of the members of the Philadelphia branch are also women of European descent. I think that's true of a number of the West Coast branches as well. So part of building the Black Liberation Caucus is using our influence around the country, where we know people in Boston, where we know people in San Jose, in San Francisco, Oakland, etc. And we are encouraging women of color to join this powerful organization known as the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And when we send people to the Philadelphia branch, we hope that you will welcome them. When we send people to the Detroit branch, we hope that you will welcome them. And that's like the first step in accountability, and then being consistent about it and being transparent with people by saying, we've been a branch for a long time and we've been an all-white branch and we'd like to change that if that's what you would like to do. So that's how we exercise that principle of accountability, consistency, and transparency, which we call ACT. You must act in order to integrate your branches. See the Triangle branch, 3 board members of SARN are members of the Triangle branch now. Rosa Saavedra joined in May when we did the launch of the May branch. So she's in the Triangle branch, along with Mary White, who lives in Durham, North Carolina, along with Ashley Carrington, who's just agreed to join the SARN board. She's 34 years old and she lives in Cary, North Carolina, and she's a member of the Triangle branch. So that's how we do the one by one we grow thing. That's how we do the building branches that are integrated branches, not all white branches, but branches that include women of color. So hopefully I didn't take too long answering that question, George.
And in some ways you answered this other question, which I'm going to pivot to you, Shantae, if you want to take it on, is what can WILPF US do to support the work of the Black Liberation Caucus?
So the friends and allies of Brown and Black people can begin having cross-cultural dialogue within people of European descent and encourage Brown and Black people to join the Black Liberation Caucus. You can begin to hold each other to account when you hear words and language that does not support Brown and Black people. You can also encourage the joining of 2 members for each chapter that doesn't have any representation of people who look like any of us. Because I love the color of my skin, that does not mean that I hate the color of your skin. Because you love the color of your skin, that does not mean that you hate the color of my skin. But when you hate the color of my skin just because you love the color of your skin, then we have a problem.
Well,
and
George,
I want to add, oh, sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead, George,
okay.
And then I'll go after you.
Well, the main thing that will help support the Black Liberation Caucus is ask women of color to join your branch. When they join the branch, also let them know the Black Liberation Caucus. Here's how you join the Black Liberation Caucus. That's the best way to support Black leadership in your branch and the participation of women of color in your branch. Theresa?
Yes. The one thing that we have learned so much, George and I, from attending the regular national board meetings pretty much every month since January, and we're eager to attend the next one. But what we learned is that WILPF gives out many grants. So at our last Black Liberation Caucus meeting, we talked about doing a national conference of about 50 women in attendance. And that conference will be in Roswell, Georgia. Shante and I already negotiated a great agreement with a hotel, which has a huge breakfast room and they serve free breakfast. So we're talking about doing this conference on Human Rights Day. So we're asking people to support members. This will be a multicultural, multinational conference. So white women will be invited, but it's going to be sponsored by the 3 branches in the South, Triad, Metro Atlanta, and Fannie Lou Hamer, in addition to the Black Liberation Caucus. So we're the sponsors of this proposal that we're going to submit on October 1 to get a $2,500 mini grant to help defray the cost of the conference so that we can have a high attendance, particularly of women in the branches in the South that we started. So that's a very concrete, material way you can support by making sure we have enough. So we should have our budget together by September so that when we send in our proposal on October 1, we will know exactly how much it's going to cost. And hopefully there'll be enough of us who can pay our own way, pay for our own hotel room, etc. But we're prepared as the Southern Anti-Racism Network to also donate for women in the South who would like to attend from the branches where members of the Black Liberation Caucus exist. But that would be a real educational meeting to talk about how do we consistently integrate the branches around the country so that they also include women of color. And we know that we have some other members of the Black Liberation Caucus present. And I know there has been a thing said that we only want questions in the chat. But I'm calling on Dr. Jean Kennedy, Philip Cole, or any of the other members of the Black Liberation Caucus who are present, if they would like to unmute themselves and say a word or two, it would be great. Because Dr. Jean Kennedy is in the Fresno branch and Philip Cole is in the San Francisco branch. Are you out there, comrades? Are you out there?
Excuse me, Theresa, if they wish to speak, they should raise their hand and then we can co-host them so that they are able to speak.
There are another couple of questions I want to put out there. Gloria McMillan put in a comment more than a question that she's working to build a branch in Chicago and she's been in touch with BIPOC faculty at the University of Illinois and Chicago campus, and COVID is making that slow. I would caution having a branch that's heavily academics. Our Triad branch has a mix of people from different backgrounds. So you may want to ask students, you may want to ask some of the workers at the university, some of the housekeepers or other staff, clerical staff. The other question is, oh, it's a comment from Cricket. In addition to the anti-racism of the 3 new branches, are any of the members working with any of the WILPF issue committees that have been highlighted during the Congress? And I know that we're working with the Advancing Human Rights Committee for sure. I don't know about some of the others. And I've got hands from Philip Cole and Dr. Jean Kennedy. So let's go Dr. Jean and then Philip. Go ahead.
Well, good morning, everyone. Enjoying the presentation. I am from the Fresno Branch. I have been a member there for within about 15 years. I came into the branch through the invitation of Ellie Bluestein. And I think I've stayed with the branch as long as I have because I felt like she was mentoring me and helping me to find my voice and helping me to be part of the larger group. And I appreciated that. That was a very valuable experience for me. Ooh, there's a feedback. Will I continue? Yes, and so maybe that would be a heads up for those of you who are wanting to integrate, quote unquote, the branches, to maybe identify mentors or people who would be willing to be mentors, so that when people of color come in, they can feel that they have an ally there to help them through the protocol. We do know that women of color speaks a different language, different from women who are not of color. So even being able to understand the language in body language and way things are said, the protocol, when I talk about language, I'm talking about the protocol. So that will help us all to be able to know how to present ourselves. The last thing, I am thankful that I have an opportunity in the Fresno branch to develop a group called Unpacking Racism and Understanding Your Blind Spot. I put the emphasis on understanding your blind spots with the group. And that gives me a voice. It helps me to help others to know how to connect with me as a woman of color. And it's not, and so I want to see that continue to grow. And I'm given the opportunity to write an article, and I hope to do that on a monthly basis, where at least the voice is also out to people who are not part of the WILPF group, but because they see my articles will want to become part of WILPF. So that is my contribution, and I'm excited about the direction we're going.
Thanks so much, Jean. Now, Philip Cole, and you take a couple of minutes, Philip, and then I have an announcement I'm gonna make before you go, Philip, and then after Philip, Theresa, to you to wrap things up. The announcement is one of the ways that everyone on the call can find out about some of the history in the Black Liberation Movement of patriarchy. We are having our monthly Umoja Unity Talks, which the Southern Anti-Racism Network organizes every month. And this month we begin a series to discuss burning patriarchy down to the ground. I'm going to put the link to register there. We're going to hear from Philip Cole in a couple of minutes, and then Theresa will wrap us up. Philip?
Okay, good afternoon. I really would like to ask Theresa to address the problem of the aging process of the membership of WILPF and how it's such an important issue. She's touched on it in the past, and because we have this great forum today, I would like to see her address that issue and go forward from there. Thank you.
Well, I'll leave it to the brother to put the sister on the spot. Lower your hand, Philip, so that we know that you've already spoken. But one of the things that I've been saying, having been an organization person from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee for my beginning, and here's a picture of John Lewis and me in 2003 at the 40th anniversary of the March on Washington. He was my comrade and my friend. And my mother worked to get him elected every time in the 5th District of Georgia. And my mother, as a senior, was president of her tenants association for 25 years. So I know the important contributions of seniors to society and the work that they do. When I saw my mother organizing, I couldn't believe it. And she said, I got it from you. And so I cried so hard when she told me that, because she was talking about having watched me in SNCC as a young person, organizing Black Power. And she used to always say, you're going to get killed. And then when she woke up one day and said, what my daughter is doing is correct. And so I think it's important for older women to always look towards the next generation, which many organizations are calling it building a pathway to continue. So Shantae McLaughlin, who's 41 years old, Ashley Carrington, who's 34 years old. So we're building the branches in the South with a deliberate emphasis on including younger women. Everybody I'm recruiting is younger than me, trust me. And I just want to encourage branches around the country where there's so many wonderful freedom fighters who are in their 70s and in some cases in their 80s to welcome younger women into your branches. It's the only thing that's going to make the branch sustainable. So you have got to have younger members in your branches. When I learned that Tina Shelton was the youngest member, I think she said, in her branch, and I believe Tina told me, if she doesn't mind me telling, that she's in the 50-ish range. And so I do know there are quite a few dynamic women in the Philadelphia branch, but you've got to have younger and younger women. And thank you, Philip. That was not exactly on the topic, but it's an important thing to remember, because there are lots of Black women and women of color out here who are really active, and they're ready to do and be a part of this wonderful organization. When people read that brochure, Join WILPF Today, all those young women that we recruited in the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, it was like, oh, this organization has been around since 1915, because everybody knows that the NAACP was founded in 1909. So Jane Addams was a part of that. So Jane Addams stands out as a real example of a reliable ally up to a point. You know, when you're struggling inside your organization to get people to stand up and stand up against white supremacy, it's really hard when you're a person of European descent. But don't quit, don't stop. Get other people who think like you so that you can work together to continue to support what we're trying to do with the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And I believe that's our 45 minutes or close to it. So Darian DeLu, if there is nothing else that you need from us, I think we can say that this is the end of our session, Madam President.
Thank you so much, George, Theresa, and Shantae. We really appreciate this presentation. We're going to have a brief musical break now before the next program, and we'll be back in about 4 minutes.